Welcome back to another episode of White Collars here on Veritas Radio. Today, Charles and I are joined by a good friend, Tim Busch, who, just to put out on the onset, is not Charles's father.
No, no relation. So just a very coincidental spelling and
You have to be so
adopted.
happy about that.
No, no, I just he has to put on a smile for the radio. But yes, no, no relation. But yeah, no, it's really great to have you with us, Tim, and thanks for wearing a white collar. So you make us all look to shame. I should have put on a tie. But I think we'll kick off our question here. How does one end up from the village of Clinton to Orange County, California?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I couldn't have been born in a smaller town, maybe even smaller than yours, which was only 11 miles away. But I had a rich uncle. Everybody does, and uh, I went there after college and saw how beautiful Orange County was. It was still in its early stages of maturity, and I worked my way to move there and live with my uncle. And start my law firm out there and be licensed to practice law out there. And then, of course, I met Steph in 1982, and we became married in 1985. And I don't know why, but Orange County girl didn't want to move to Michigan, so we moved to California.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. But your faith really grew, though, in Clinton, right? You were an altar server there and got to experience the church. And so, can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
So I was born in 1954, pre-Vatican II, and all the masses were in Latin, Tridentine Mass. And I started as an altar boy, as all the kids in the Catholic church there is a small church, at 5 years old. So my Protestant mother taught me Latin. She didn't know Latin, but we just recited it and for the prayers. And someplace around third grade, I think, maybe fourth. I was attending Catholic school, parochial school, Tecumseh, Michigan, being educated by the Adrian Dominican sisters. And they said, hey, you should go to Mass more than just Sunday. And so I took that for I should go to Mass every day. So I started from then until I was graduated from high school to be at Mass every day. And so that's kind of based my faith there. But I would say the sisters really, really help me understand faith. My father was Catholic, and he took us to Mass every Sunday. But this was a little bit more serious and deep. And then, of course, I spent a lot of time with the priest who we shared with Celine, your hometown, Charles. And so sometimes I'd serve over there as well, but that was after the mass was in English by that time.
Well, I know that, like, it sounds too, right, that your Catholic education with the sisters was so impactful. And we know, and our listeners might not know, but there's obviously the Tim and Steph School, Bush School of Business. And then you have started, I know, JSerra and some other schools that you're involved in. That must have been like just a deeply instilled passion for you to continue to get involved in schools, and the Catholic identity is.
I think, yeah, the elementary school experience, and I was only there for 6 years because the Archbishop of Detroit mandated that all class sizes had to be reduced to 45 students. Now, today that's laughable, but in those days, there were 65 students in our classes. Today, if you put one more person over 25, you'll be strangled, and drawn and quartered. So the sisters were definitely part of it. And so when my children started to grow up, we were in South Orange County, wasn't really fully developed yet. So um, there were some schools that were built in the 50s, like these small little parochial schools that hadn't been touched since the 50s, and they were in bad physical condition. And the only school that was decent was an Anglican school that I don't think they were that faithful to the Anglican church. So I decided, through God's providence, I met an Anglican priest who wanted to start a school. And I said, well, if we can start it as a Catholic school, I'll do it. And so that's what happened. And I became chairman. And a year later, he left. And then I was here holding the bag. And so I got my wife involved, and she took it from there. And we had struggled to find priests, but finally we got the Norbertine priests to help us, and they were there for about 30 years. And now we have a diocesan priest who works there part time. I love to get sisters there. I went about 10 years later and started the JSerra Catholic High School, which has turned out to be a huge hit. We have 1,300 students. It's one of the best schools in Orange County. We have Dominican Sisters of Ann Arbor, so it's very much they're identical to the Sisters of Adrian. Then the Sisters of Adrian took their habits off after Vatican II, so they aren't as conventional as the Ann Arbor sisters. But Ann Arbor, as you guys know, is right near where I was raised. Just and so we was really blessed to have them. So we have Norbertines and the sisters from Ann Arbor, four of them, and we have diocesan priests to help out as well. So that they're really covered with very solid lay leaders as well.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I think, yeah, you do such a good job, Tim, of bringing together so many parts of the church and your different projects and initiatives, which, I think it's a lot you do and have done. So yeah, you obviously support education, but also you studied yourself. So you did your undergrad in accounting and you had a law degree. What kind of inspired you to take that route when you were a youth?
Yeah, my I'm a first generation college student. I never really thought of myself as that. I'm always helping, the Hispanics and others that come from families where they didn't have parents that are college educated. Well, guess what? I didn't either, and never really reflected on it. My father was a businessman. He owned supermarkets. I worked there when I was 7 years old, and the but I said the only way to be successful is you got to become a doctor, lawyer, or architect. And so didn't really like the doctor routine, wasn't a great at drawing. So I figured I better go the lawyer route. And then my brother was an accountant. He was always, beating me down. So I said, well, I'm just going to become an accountant too, so that he doesn't say, oh, yeah, you're a lawyer, but I'm really a CPA. So I'm a CPA and a lawyer. And it worked out perfect because I became a tax lawyer and I love tax law. I hate litigation. I never litigated. I loved helping people transfer assets to avoid estate taxes and then minimize their income taxes as well. So that was a track I took, but I really wasn't fulfilled. I really wanted to get into business like my dad. So I helped my dad restart his business in 1975. It's wildly successful. It's over 50 years ago. He had been in it since 1948. And then I began developing real estate in Michigan and then ultimately in California. And that became my business, ultimately hotels. We were in a lot of different real estate, like apartments and shopping centers and such, but primarily my real estate investments are in hotels. And I love that. I love the hospitality side of the business.
Yeah. During your lawyer days when that was like the main focus, how did you find it to be able to integrate? I don't know if faith and taxes necessarily come to mind. So, how are you able to integrate that or to live your faith in that kind of environment?
Really, what got me to transfer my faith in business was joining Legatus Catholic CEO organization. I joined about 36 years ago. It was in its infancy. I think it was about 3 years old at the time. Tom Monahan, the founder of Domino's Pizza, had started this when he was timed out of YPO, Young Presidents Organization. I thought this is a great idea. I applied for Young Presidents Organization and they didn't accept me because they didn't want any lawyers. They wanted true business guys, even though my law firm was big enough to qualify. And so it was God's providence because the next week the door opens to put me in Legatus. And had I focused my energy in a secular organization, a fine one, but a secular organization, YPO, which my son actually is in now, it would have taken me away from faith. And it was through Legatus and the education that you have every month and just witnessing other people that I realized you can do both. You can be successful in business. Obviously, Tom Monahan was a billionaire. And you can maintain your faith. He was a daily communicant. So I had not been a daily communicant since my college days. I went maybe once a week or twice a week occasionally, besides the Sunday obligation. But I went back to daily mass when I was roughly 35 years old. And that really, through the grace, changes your entire life. And then, of course, you get into the other parts of the sacraments, the rosary and retreats and spiritual direction and confession. um, all the things that Legatus and our other lay apostolates like Napa Institute encourage people to do. And that's what really, really changes your life and your focus.
Yeah, no, I think it's really impressive, Tim, that you're able to make the time for daily mass because I think a lot of people, right, you're always awake whenever I text you or send you an email. It's amazing. But you always, despite all the stuff that's going on, you always have time for mass and you make it a priority. I know even when you're traveling and everything, it's really a goal. So when you go to daily mass, how does that kind of center your day or recalibrate or refocus how you approach the rest of your day in the working world?
Yeah. Well, I think it's truly grace. I mean, I think um, look at not every daily mass from the point of view of preaching is fabulous, but as I'm often reminded, it's not about the preaching; it's about the Blessed Sacrament. And I have to remind myself a lot that sometimes, but it really, you feel the power. It's kind of like, this is a trite example, but when you work out every day, you're going to be better fit than somebody that doesn't work out every day. And I think the same way for faith. People say, "Well, I don't really need to go to church. I talk to Jesus myself," and all that. That's just a cop out. I think. I'm not saying you have to go to mass every day to go to heaven, but it does help. And there is true grace that's given by daily communicants, and by regular confession and the rosary, and really starting to pray for other people and other situations, even as in situations in your own life. And the older I get, I really talk to my kids about this a lot. Pray on it. And I don't mean that just to be trite and say, "Oh, I'm going to pray for you." No, no, no. Prayer is so powerful, but you got to believe it. And when it shows up, you got to acknowledge it. When you pray for something and it actually works out, you got to be acknowledging it. I don't like this. People pray to St. Anthony for a parking spot, and they're saying, "I'll make a deal. I'll stop drinking. For the rest of my life if I just need this parking spot to get a position in this new job, and I'm going to be late if I don't get a parking spot." And then a parking spot shows up, and he says, "Don't worry, I got it covered anyway. I don't need that." So, in a sense, you cancel all of your commitments because your prayers were answered. And that's what most people do, is their prayers are answered, and then they move on to the next thing, and they don't recognize and stop and give thanks to the fact that their prayers were answered. They think it was just a coincidence.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. Something I experience on the parish level in the ministry, and I think, Tim, I've been fortunate enough to be able to spend a lot of time with you over throughout the years of my priesthood, and I think one of the things that I've noticed is you're frequently holding the rosary in your hands, and I think sometimes people think like, "I don't have 20 minutes to pray the rosary," or "I can listen to Mark Wahlberg on the Hallow app pray in 12 minutes." Um, but I always think like just that powerful image. It's not showy. You're not doing it to be seen. I know, but I think just like that idea of like, if the rosary's in my hands, I'm more likely to pray, or if I'm walking, I can get a few decades in. So I've been noticing it, and I've wanted to ask you for a while of like, how does that rosary kind of integrate and form and shape your day?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing about the rosary. And I tell people that are not Catholic, you can pray the rosary. It's not illegal. It's not like you going to communion. You can pray the rosary. And I do carry one around. I carry a metal one. These ones that they sell, they originally were made for the World War I soldiers. And the reason is because I'm always fooling around with this rosary or praying it, and I was breaking one every 2 weeks. And I go, "This is really frustrating." So I got these rosaries. They're amazing, combat proof rosaries. But I think, in the streets of New York, you won't believe the looks you get when you're running around with the rosary in your hand, especially, a lot of the Muslims have rosaries. It's not rosaries that they have their own beads that they pray on. They're a little smaller than ours. It doesn't really hang. And people think, well, that's cultural. That's kind of like knitting of a woman. They're just doing something to keep their hands busy. But they're praying. It's a different prayer. But when you see a white Anglo guy walking down the streets of New York City dressed in a suit and he's got a rosary in his hand, what are you, some kind of creep? It's just something that people, you know, they've checked their faith at home, and they don't bring it out. And I think it's very enlightening to people. So I do think there's a witness to it. But you don't always, I don't always carry it outside. I was carrying it outside today when I was driving around in Brooklyn, in the murder capital of Manhattan. And I thought, man, if I'm going to get shot here, I want to have this rosary in my hand so that A, it can protect me, and B, I'll die with a rosary in my hand. That'll go down great. But no, I think I do two rosaries a day, and then one the chaplet. The chaplet is very quick. I mean, you can do that in about 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and then the rosary is a 12-minute rosary, and I do think it is a great way to keep your mind focused. And you can't pray the rosary without a rosary. You'll start, you'll get five Hail Marys into it. Somebody will distract you. You will forget where you're at. I've tried it. I sometimes I do it on my fingers and so forth, but I just carry a rosary all the time wherever I go. And we had a rosary here at the house, and several of the priests didn't even have a rosary. I was like, wow, it's amazing. But I gave them a rosary. I said, now put this in your pocket so you can use it next time.
Exactly. Yeah, no, the rosary is a great tool, and yeah, something that really reminds you. I find the mystery so helpful, like throughout the week, to kind of recalibrate and bring you back in. And then also when it changes, right, during Lent and Advent, right, and you recall the specific mysteries to those season. Yeah, it's a great tool. I do it whenever a plane gets turbulence, so it helps calm me down.
Okay, calms you down.
Hopefully I've saved a few planes in my career. But also, so Tim, yeah, you went from lawyer to hospitality. How did you make that jump, right? So I mean, you still do both, but that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of industries there.
Well, the law firm was definitely my business that really flourished, and it was really the clients that I had that I was able to begin funding real estate projects and ultimately hotels. And so I had that unique experience. Very rarely do you see. I don't know any other lawyers that do this. It is a sensitive thing, but I had very affluent clients, so they had resources and they were tax sensitive, which real estate is. And so I started just building real estate. And actually, my wife, Steph, ran the business for many years until she ran St. Anne's School. And then we hired independent people. I never personally ran the day-to-day hotel. My son does now, but I just wasn't my deal, and I was too busy, billing people for tax advice that I could do it. Now I really haven't practiced regularly in tax for 15 years. I do handle larger clients, legacy clients that I've had for 30 or 40 years, but the actual work is done by other lawyers and paralegals in the office. I just call the shots. So I haven't billed an hour, I don't think, in 20 years. I do work for people, but I don't charge them. The lawyers do, but I don't charge them. I just don't want to be keeping track of time. It's like high paid ditch digging. You have to really, keep track of your hours. And by the way, it's a mundane, but it's an insane system of how you charge people. And I wish there was another way to do it. But that's not good for the client or for us. So, that's what I did. So I'm all in with hotels, and now spending about half my time minimum on nonprofits, of course, Napa Institute being the most consuming.
Yeah, and it's been coming up in the readings throughout kind of daily mass, and it's drawn. My attention's been drawn to it. I think it's because of my affiliation and work with Napa. St. Paul, it's almost like a command. He says, "Be hospitable," and so and this is a big focus of the Napa Institute too. And I think one of the great things about your hotels is a few of them have chapels where people can go to mass, and it's been fun, especially being at one of your hotels with a group of priests and seeing the patrons in there who are staying there. It's just like, what are all these priests doing at this hotel in Napa? But how does that, maybe not in the day to day, but in the big grand scheme of where to put a hotel, how to design it, and all this stuff, like, what are the core principles of hospitality in your mind that keep it successful business wise in a secular world, but also is informed by that Christian understanding of being hospitable?
Yeah, and I didn't pay much attention to that either, even when I was in the hospitality business, but I attended a seminar on hospitality. It was a Catholic seminar on hospitality about 6 months ago. And we used all these readings and other important writers, not just in the Bible, but fathers of the church. And, hospitality, I guess, is fundamentally the friendship and love that we give to other people, that especially people we don't know. And, I think what we try to do is to teach people this is your job. It is a very important job. And the only way you're going to have joy when you go home at night is because of how you help somebody who was in need during the day. And getting in fights with people and arguing with them about what the rules are, that doesn't make you have fun. As a matter of fact, you go home miserable and you also lose a client. And, your job is to say, yes, what's the question? And I think if you do that, you have a lot more uplifting things. And I tell all of my employees, everything you do, the housekeepers, the engineers, back of house, whatever, this is all important to the survival of this hotel. And you have great dignity. You co create with God, no matter what your job is. And when you put it in that perspective, because most people are just working for a paycheck. And a lot of people aren't realizing without that job, they would have no joy. Even if somebody, which they did during COVID, wrote them a check for more than they were making when they worked. It was remarkable to me, but several of my employees returned to work when I asked them. And I asked him, well, you could stay home and work and make more money. He says, I was miserable at home. I was fighting with my spouse. He was fighting with me. I had to get back to work to keep our marriage going. And it was beautiful because I did some sit downs with him. So hospitality is part of the Christian motive and teaching. One of the other things that I wanted to do was get the Gideon Bibles out of there and put in Catholic Bibles, which I did straight on 40 years ago. Then I thought, while I'm at it, why don't I throw in a rosary, which I did? How about a crucifix? That's going to freak everybody out. And then I put instructions of how to pray the rosary, and I put it in that drawer. And I get some really interesting letters, all positive, by the way. I've never gotten any negative. People say, I'm Catholic. And I opened that drawer and saw there was a rosary in there. I told my wife, can you believe it? Come on over here. Are you going to see this? They just flip out. It's a very simple thing, and people take the Bibles, they take the rosaries. That's fine. So we replenish them like we replenish soap in the shower. So all of the ladies with their, or guys with their push carts in there are Bibles, rosaries, and crucifixes, and they check the drawer. And if the Bible has been taken, they restock it. And then every 6 months, we send another bunch of Bibles. I think last year we had 2,000 Bibles taken. That's not a bad thing. And it's not like stealing towels.
No, no. I won't ask you how many of those have vanished, but yeah, no. The Bible says use the Ignatius ones, which have good
Yeah.
commentary and insights, so people can really benefit from them. So yeah, you talk about obviously there's the joy in work and the joy of having a rewarding job and being able to contribute. And so, but what is for you a part of the process do you find most rewarding? Is it the scoping out the site? Is it when it opens for day one? Is it once you get the operations after some time? Like, what's part is most rewarding and fulfilling for you?
I think all of that's very beautiful, but that's a one-off. And I think what's most exciting is being there for your employees and for your guests. And we've got 1,500 employees. Somebody's in the hospital all the time. Somebody's parents are dying. Somebody's spouse is dying. They're dying. They're getting sick. And being able to have masses for them and have the employees who are not even Catholic come to masses in the hotels for those that we have, 4 hotels that we have it, is a wonderful thing. And I get beautiful letters from employees because we run this as a faith-based organization so that we're going to be prayed for, and people. That, to me, when I look back on it and I'm on my deathbed, will be one of the things that I've appreciated is being able to help guests out and employees out and their families in time of need. And of course, it's been a joy to have my kids in the business. Family businesses can be challenging. I've been in a family business since I was a child. My dad ran it like a family business. We invested when I was 21 years old. And, you have a few fights here and there. And my personal family, we had a little bit more stronger arguments when my father was around, but I purposely have avoided any type of, you know, anxiety getting created there. I mean, yeah, you have tough conversations, but you don't need to yell and scream. That really gets magnified when you're talking to a child or family member. And but it's really been fun, and you can trust them. I mean, everybody, has their own agenda about what they want to do. They're good people, but if a better job comes up, they're going to walk out the door and to give you 2 weeks notice if you're lucky. And then what do you do? And with your kids there, they're not going to walk out the door, or you hope they don't. And you can entrust them with enormous responsibility and then you can do things that you otherwise couldn't do. And so that's also been a good thing. And it teaches them the way you operate, and it's a joy to see them repeat what I've tried to teach them, mostly through example. They hold firm to this as much as anybody does. And
Yeah, if you have to get that, that's okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Cool.
My wife's we're having the apartment clean, and so anyway, I think that's been a benefit. You do create a lot of jobs and construction jobs. I mean, we're building this hotel in Phoenix. There's 150 people every single day. And these are high paying jobs. And it's incredible what is going on there. And I really, it brings joy. And I'll go and we'll pray with the contractors, and it flips people out. I mean, they've been using inappropriate language all day long because that's what happens in the contracting business. And all of a sudden, some guy dressed up in a suit is praying, then I'm going to be okay. And it's like, it freaks them out. And several people come up and say, I didn't know you were Catholic. I didn't know there was going to be a chapel in this hotel. I'm Catholic. This is great. I'm so excited about working on this project now, realizing we're building a chapel. That's been fun.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, having been in your hotel chapels, it's always, I think, really cool to see someone when they're starting or ending their shift, they come in and maybe they do a quick sign of the cross or spend a moment in prayer, and have it as a resource for your employees and for your guests, right, where they can, be exposed to the Blessed Sacrament if it's reserved there, or at least a prayerful environment, is, I think, a great tribute. And there is so much of the country's closing parishes and churches, and you're building them. And so that's, I think, a great testament to what it is when you integrate with your faith with your work. But you also obviously you mentioned your family's involved. This is a family business, so and some of the joys, right, where you can trust them and being able to work with them. But what's been kind of the excitements there, and I've heard from some people at PHG on how you kind of started Garrett out and how you got him acquainted with all the different aspects of the business. So I was wondering if maybe there's something you could share about how that all worked.
Well, Garrett started. He wanted to. He had high hopes like I did, and wanted to become investment banking and consulting and all this, and graduates in 2010. And you guys know what was going on in 2010. I called up all my friends in the banks and everything. They go, hire him. We're laying off half of our people. It was bad. It was like 1929 all over again. And so I said, okay, Garrett, I'll be your first client. Go fix my winery, because I was losing $1 million a year. And that's what he did. He worked there for 10 years, moved to Napa, got the winery profitable in the first year, eliminated the $1 million loss. And to this day, we just had a call a few minutes ago, and it's chugging along. It's not going to get me rich, but it's a fun thing to do. I like it. It's part of hospitality. And right now, the wine business in Napa and pretty much every place is very much suffering because, alcohol consumption has really declined. with younger generations and people using the shot and all that stuff. So, but then I brought him down to run capital markets, which was really more of his education, which is raising money and financing. He was very good at that. And then I went through one of my presidents during COVID, and I said, well, I'm just going to put Garrett to run the company. And I really, he's amazing at it, but it's a lot of pressure running a day to day. Everybody's, there's a problem going on every 5 minutes. And, I hope someday he can get back into capital markets because he's really good at that and take the burden off of having to be there every day and even have to run hotels when the general manager either leaves or you move a general manager, you can't find a new one. So that's been great. Kenzie didn't study any of this, but she has been incredible at designing new hotels and renovating existing hotels. She's brought, hotels out of the ashes by just redesigning them and bringing them more current to the eye of the consumer who's her age, not my age. And so we've got, I think, 3 renos and 1 new hotel this year alone. And so she's busy. And I'm very excited. The Phoenix Hotel will be the nicest hotel in all of Phoenix and Scottsdale when it's open. There'll be no other even close. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to see Kenzie's work and how that eye for design, like in Paseo, the hotel you have in Huntington Beach, right? There's the colorful wall, and it's all made of flip flops, right? And so and all the other things that she's been involved with at the other hotels, because I think they are very beautiful properties, right? It's not just kind of a simple simple thing, but to see all that, and then obviously it integrates into how beautiful the chapels are. So you also mentioned the wine, which I'm not the expert on, but you also have a faith series. So what was kind of how did you decide, I'm going to open a winery in Napa?
Well, that was a aspirational goal of going up to Napa, enjoying the lifestyle with my wife in our early years of marriage. And also, I told her I want to build a hotel in Napa and I want to get a winery. And she said, are you kidding me? Because, we were running limited service hotels. We really didn't have the aptitude to do either of those. But over time, there's a will, there's a way. We now have the largest hotel in Napa Valley by a long shot. And we have a small winery, it's a boutique winery called Trinitas. And one of the things that's saving us is that my general manager, who was not Catholic, but was born on December 12th. And I told her, it's a beautiful day. It's my wife's birthday, and it's Our Lady Guadalupe's feast day, Mary's apparition in Mexico City. And she started reviewing it and seeing the epic photos of Our Lady Guadalupe and designed a label that actually won the #2 label in Napa by the San Francisco Chronicle, which is usually, because it's so close to Napa, votes on wine and labels, and it became a hot seller. It was Petit Verdot. Nobody would have bought a Petit Verdot, but they're going to buy Our Lady Guadalupe. And so it was so successful that she's created all the other Marian apparitions, from Knock to Fatima to Lourdes to Champion. And I said, it'd be cool to make wine for the Pope. So when I met Benedict XVI, I had created a wine called Ratzinger, which was his name, family name. And it was a red Zinfandel. And I gave it to Pope Benedict, and he was just animated. He didn't drink wine, but he was animated, took it to his room. I thought, that's kind of cool. And then when Francis came in, we developed a wine called Cabernet Francis, which was a Cabernet Franc. Which rarely people buy that 100% varietal. It's usually they want a Cabernet Sauvignon. And I took that to him, and he drank it in 2 hours and had it for lunch. Ratzinger never drank my wine. He was drinking it, and I was told by many people when they were at Santa Marta, Trinitas was on the table. And so, because he wanted more wine, so we got it. We had to go around to all the Roman Curia and collect all the bottles I'd given the cardinals and said, it's for the Pope. and they gave it all back, and then I redistributed wine to them. So every year we would bring wine to the Pope with all the various labels, and try to keep them stocked. And the last time I saw him, the year before he died, he said, "Oh, the man with my holy water," and and he didn't speak much English, but he knew how to say that. And when he came to 2015, every single lunch and dinner in D.C., New York, and Philadelphia with the Pope had Trinitas wine. I went to each and every cardinal and said, "I will provide the wine 100% free if you'll serve it for the meals," which they did. And so that's been fun. And the really great story is the general manager converted to Catholicism because of studying these apparitions of Mary. What a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. The Francis wine is really really wonderful. And there's a Pope Leo wine that you just came out. We were, I was in Rome with you when he was elected, and I remember talking about already having the design ready to go. And I don't think you've had the opportunity to give it to him yet, though, right?
No, but he's missing it. I'm telling you, the Cabernet Franc was definitely our best wine. Uh, I just had a bottle with my wife yesterday of the 18. The 21 is not ready yet, so I think it's going to need a little bit more time. But the Pope Leo is a 22, and that means it's younger than the Cabernet Franc that's not ready, and it is smashing. I mean, we served it to a lot of different people over the last 8 to 10 months, and it's going to be, and the label's really cool, and I think the Pope will be very proud of it. I hope to get it to him soon, but when God's providence he'll get it. And in the meantime, the cardinals and bishops and everybody else is drinking it and enjoying it.
Exactly. So, but yeah, no, Tim, you talked about the joy of having your manager convert, right? But I've noticed there's such a zeal for souls that you have. Like we were at a wine tasting, and the guy leading us through it was talking about how he's getting married, and he was kind of raised Catholic, and he wasn't. And like as soon as when he left the table, like we have to get him back. And you were all talking about that. So where does that kind of passion come from to be not only like, oh yeah, it'd be great if he was Catholic again, but to actually follow up? Because I think you were like texting people that knew him and like, how do we get him to come to mass, or how do we help him to get back into the faith? So where does that energy and drive come from?
It's the love of the soul. If you really want to do a favor for somebody, is get him back on track with faith. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to be Catholic to get to heaven. I've never held that position, but it makes it a lot easier because the discipline of Catholics, and I think that's one of the reasons Catholics today are disproportionately successful in business, is because they have that discipline of faith and of the rubrics of faith that are really founded by Jesus Christ, rooted in the Bible, and it has a magisterium that the entire world, I explain this to my grandkids and say, I've got the readings right here in my phone, because every day in every church throughout the world, they're doing the exact same readings. Now, this just blows people's minds, especially Protestants, that, they just pick the reading of that, ties into their homily, and as opposed to the homily that ties into the readings. And so I love the Catholic faith. And I love seeing people come back into it. Reverts are really important. I'm working on a couple right now that are Presbyterian, and they're very interested. They call themselves Catholic curious, so that means they're open, to it. And so the more you can expose to them, and the idea of the real presence is just theologically way too far to understand it. The apostles said the same thing. When Jesus tried to teach them about the real presence, and they said, this is scary, this is, so I think that's what, you kind of have to start one step at a time, but this is what we're trying to do with the Eucharistic procession in New York City, is why are we going in Times Square with a wafer of bread and a real fancy gold monstrance? Because we're taking Jesus there. And some people that are even in the procession don't realize what we're doing. This is evangelization. Jesus is speaking to each and every one of these people as we walk by them. And the Catholics that haven't been to church in a long time, we brought the church to them. You don't need to go into St. Patrick's. We're going to bring Jesus to you in the streets of New York City. And I think that's the great thing. I'm really animated about this year bringing Protestants to our procession, because if they really want to understand what we're doing, they need to understand that we believe that is the true body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus. And you may think we're nuts, but they're going to figure it out down the road through the grace of God. And it's going to be tough the first time they hear that, or the first time you say that to them. But it's true. So, it's as true as if you jump out of this building, you're going to fall down to the ground. And I think that's why I'm really animated by processions, which actually started back in my hometown in Clinton, where we did a big procession, not so big. It went around the church, not so big church, and probably 50 people, not so big crowd. But it just made me, I just enjoyed it, and I enjoyed serving it when I was just a little child. It made an impression on me. We have to realize, don't worry about what people pay attention to what you say and do now. It's what they realize a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, especially grandchildren. You're talking to them at 7 years old. They don't even know what you're talking about. They know the words, they know what you're saying, but they don't know what it means. But the mind is so beautiful. It holds all this information. And I can remember today what my grandfather and grandmother were teaching me, and they've been gone more than 50 years, more than 50 years. So you never forget that stuff, and neither will anybody else, just like you preaching, Father, at a mass, some weekday or Sunday. They may not walk out understanding what you're talking about, but they'll remember it, and they'll reconcile through the grace of God.
Yeah, there's been a lot of times where people have come up to me months later and said, "You said in a homily once this," and I don't even remember. My sermons aren't memorable to me. But so yeah, the Napa Institute Eucharistic Processions in New York City at St. Patrick's on October 13th, the Tuesday after Columbus Day, and it's been one of the great privileges of that I'm so close to the city that I can go in and participate in. And I was actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because I was hoping we could share some of those graces. You walk into New York City, and as the procession begins, it's quiet, which is not normal for New York City. So I was wondering if you talk about that, and then also some of the other things that has happened in the city during the processions and how it's grown.
Yeah, so we have several thousand people. More importantly, last year we got 11 million views, thanks to our friend Grady Conley. In the year of the attacks of Israel, in October 7th, we had it on October 11th afterwards, 2022, I believe. And we had 18 million people, look at that procession. So it's not just what we're doing in the streets of New York, which if that's all it was, that'd be well worth it. But it's how we're impacting other people and other Catholics that are saying, Father Sean just texted me today with a picture of a Eucharistic procession he was leading. And this is what inspires other people to do it. And we had Eucharistic processions back in the 50s, but we really haven't had them for the last 40 years. And they have them in Europe all the time, but it's more cultural. It's like a parade to them. This is nothing like a parade. And Father Enrique Salva, the rector, who says, I watch 40 parades a year go through Manhattan, Fifth Avenue. Everybody's honking their horns, screaming and hollering, but not on the Eucharistic procession. Jesus brings calm to everyone. And the police, who by and large are Catholic, are just really proud to close the streets of New York down and for our Lord, because a lot of them probably they're working on Sunday, maybe they don't make mass, I don't know, but they really, you could see the joy in them as we walk by.
Yeah, no, you really can see it, and It's a beautiful experience to take part, and encourage everyone to take part in your super special, particularly the Napa ones. They're really solid, and I know most of our listenership is in kind of the greater tri-state area, so make sure you check it out. But yeah, so this is a part of the Napa Institute, which is another organization. One of the many things you started, Tim, as kind of a serial entrepreneur. So what led you to start the Napa Institute?
In August of 2010, I had a locution of vision, and not like I could see, but that I could hear, to create this conference, which is all I thought I was doing. I was creating a summer conference, which we did do at the end of July 2011. I'd been to Legatus conferences, which are probably the most similar to what I do, but I try to make it even bigger in the way of hospitality and engagement. Instead of just having a bunch of talks and everybody goes to bed and gets up in the morning, they all go to mass together. I wanted to have people experience what I've experienced, which is all different types of masses. The Novus Ordo is fine, but what about the Tridentine? What about the Orthodox? What about the Latin Novus Ordo? So we have had all of these masses, the Ordinariate Mass, and then of course the Rosary and adoration and the Liturgy of the Hours. All of that is at Napa Institute in the summer. Now, we have 130 masses, as you guys know. Some people say, oh, you should just do one mass for everybody. Well, first of all, we don't have any place to have that. And second of all, I think people enjoy these little small chapel masses, or we have masses in the cave like you might have done in the early Roman times. And it's beautiful, and we have a designated room, and we're not in a meeting room. We're in it is a chapel, because it is a chapel, or the cave where we dress that up. So we can have 3 masses going on at any one time, and there's amazing grace. From 2011 forward, it never fails. Saturday night, everybody is like speaking in tongues. They've got so much energy and excitement and enthusiasm from the Spirit, because they just spent 4 days, and now it's running 6 days if you come to the Arts Festival. But I didn't ever see something going beyond the conference. I would have scared me, so I'm glad the Holy Spirit didn't put that in my mind. But today, you guys know, we're doing all kinds of initiatives. Some people might call it mission creep. I call it the Holy Spirit's calling me to address certain things. And from the salon dinners, we've been at that for 3 years, trying to stop polarization in the Catholic Church. I think we've done a huge dent in it. The Napa nights, which young people, they're hungry for the faith, and we had 45 last night here in New York. Washington has even been bigger. This new ecumenical forum, my wife and mother were Protestants, and they converted. And I really see Protestant faith, they're wallowing out there. There's 40,000 Christian sects, and it's expanding rapidly, because the social issues are driving churches to change teachings on matters of social importance, like abortion, like marriage, like transgenderism, and birth control, and they're lost. And the people that are traditional, their faith has left them. And so I do think they're open to the dialogue. Whether they convert or not, that's up to the Holy Spirit and them. But I at least want them to understand Catholics are not heretics. We believe Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. He did found the Catholic Church. He did not found the Protestant Church, although the Protestants came off of the Catholic Church. And a lot of what they do is very amazing, and I think it helps Catholics. They're much better at evangelizing than we are. But this business about every minister has a different, in effect, magisterium or teaching, that doesn't work. And, this is something that why we're the biggest church in the world is because we have that magisterium. We have that magisterium. Because without it, even priests have tried to wander. The popes have even flirted with wandering. But at the end of the day, the Holy Spirit doesn't let it happen. He locks it down. And teaching on these very important issues, like marriage, transgenderism, we've been out in front on this. On socialism, the popes were out in front of this in late 1800s. This is wrong. This is taking away the dignity of human beings. It's replacing God with the state. And so for people to say that Catholics are socialists, well, there may be people in the church that are socialists, but I can tell you what, there's no Catholic dogma ever published by the Vatican that promotes socialism. It just isn't there. You can spin doctor anything you want, but the popes have been very, very clear on this issue. So I'm very pleased about that too, because this is going to destroy us if we get into this socialism thing. We spent millions and millions of people died in Europe in 1945 and thereabouts, stopping this socialism, only for people to now embrace it after we had our ancestors pay their blood to try to prevent it.
Yeah, it was funny when you were talking about the people at the end of the Napa conference speaking in tongues, and when the apostles went out after Pentecost, people thought they were drunk because they were speaking, and I think the wine definitely helps that joy, right? Wine to cheer man's heart. But one of the main pillars of the Napa Institute is fraternity, and I remember when you brought up the idea of salon dinners, I was a little hesitant, but you had a line that said we can't convert people we're not friends with, and I think the fruit of the salon dinners is the proof that it works, of just bringing people together, recognizing that we're both human, right? I think you Sarah, like you go around and you talk about your favorite Bible verse, right? And like the friendships that are created, because you know this better than anyone. You've kind of, people have been writing about you and saying things about you without ever talking to you. And so I was hoping you could just stretch out the salon dinner events a little bit more about how that friendship and just that common ground has really changed the conversation.
Yeah, I think the narrative that you talk about, it doesn't bother me, but it does frustrate me that people are saying things that they're so untrue. They're physically impossible. I mean, Tim Busch runs the Catholic Church of America. He owns EWTN, the Catholic University of America, and no bishop does anything without checking with him. It's like, it's ludicrous. I mean, the Pope can't even say that. What we did is, by getting out there and meeting with these editors of these magazines that were saying that, that's all died down. We have one more, and they've rejected my invitation for 3 years, but I'm told they're coming in the fall. And they said, but why does he want us there? We've said terrible things about him. That's the whole point. We want you there to witness what the truth is, and then go write whatever you want. But you're going to have to know what the truth is. And I believe, look, I'm not perfect. I'm not saying that. But to write things like I just reiterated is completely ludicrous. And it has hurt me with a lot of leadership in the church, Vatican representatives. They read these papers and they believe it. And it's kind of like, are you kidding me? It, maybe it should be flattering, but it's just flat out a lie. And I don't think we can really go forward with that kind of dialogue. So we had a beautiful one. His Eminence Cardinal Dolan came. We had some of the leading priests in New York here last week. It was the king of all salon dinners. And the people were extremely joyful. We had a very good representation of headliner folks that would be on what we call progressive side, and we just got along. And there's people in there that believe in same-sex marriage. There's people in there that believe in women deacons, probably women priests, probably women bishops, and we just got along. And I got emails from those very people saying, this was amazing. Thank you. When you take somebody into your house, not into a hotel, not into a restaurant, but to your house, and this is rarely done anymore, especially here in New York City, because who has houses that you can accommodate any group number of people? We have a limit. We can only handle 14 people, but it is absolutely a different game. First of all, people aren't feeling uncomfortable that somebody's going to walk by the table and see who's there because you're in a private room. And but second of all, you just feel comfortable, and you celebrate mass together, and have the cardinal celebrating mass. I mean, people know the cardinal. I'm sure they talked to him over the last 17 years, but he's now in a room with them having dinner, and there was several people that are mature and public figures that were nervous. They were very nervous in a good way. They recognize. So I think we need to take this to our parishes. I've been told by Vatican Roman Curia that we need to take it to the Vatican, and I'm sure we do. And it's not a little bit more energy than I have right now, but I do think we need to get people to do that themselves in their local communities. And I think the USCCB should recognize that and maybe adopt an edict to say, hey, we encourage this. I don't want to mandate it, but we encourage it. And we're doing one in Orange County in August in my hometown, but almost all of them, other than the 3 we've done in Orange County, have been in New York.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really great to see. Yeah, like I think there's a line you said once that it's hard to hate people you've had dinner with, and so to bring these people from different sides, different ideological spectrums, and I think there's people who are all over the place who come to this, but you also talk about how we agree on so much, right? And how the devil divides us and focuses on the 1 or 2 or 3% that we're like maybe we don't agree on. Organizing there's such commonality, and then being able to see the things we can work on together, where there's alignment, and how we can all work together. But in closing, we have 2 questions for you, Tim. So as we're coming up on the time here, the first one is, what advice would you give to a young Catholic, a business professional who wants to keep their faith, but also obviously be successful and prudent in business? So what would you say from your own experiences? What advice would you offer?
Possible, as a matter of fact, more likely. When you combine faith with your profession, it's more likely. And we haven't talked much about expressing your faith in the public marketplace, but today more than ever, that's welcome. So I would say, don't buy the lie that you get one or the other, that somehow if you're a pious person, you're poor. If you become successful, use your money for more than just consumption. This is where it gets out of hand with the wealth creation is we think, oh, we got this money, we got to go out and spend it on something so we can elevate our status. And in fact, we tick off everybody because they go, well, look at this guy, he's showing off, or look at this guy, he makes too much money, and all that stuff. So I think it's very important for people of affluence to be very careful about how they use their wealth and to use it to help other people, because otherwise you will end up empty. And so you can be successful. I think people who don't have any faith recognize people that do have faith and probably have a little bit more trust in them. And I hope they do. And so I think they are totally aligned. And once you are successful, tithing is a minimum. 10% of income is a minimum. If you're making a lot of money, you can afford more than 10% of your income.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of tithing. I think more people should do it, especially for the church. And then our final question, Tim, to wrap up the show is, when you come to the end, hopefully many, many years, 30 years from now, if you could sum up your legacy, what is the hope that your legacy would be? How would Tim Busch be remembered?
Well, I don't think they're going to canonize me, but I do think it's important that they remember, when you're gone and you're no longer alive, your teachings are more important. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. When people are alive, they're like another human. Well, I've seen them drink too much wine once, and I think I heard him say GD once, and I think, so they see you as a human, and somehow they think that somehow what you're saying has no merit. But in fact, even the saints had issues with each other, sometimes with the church. They had weaknesses, but God gave them strengths where they wanted. So I hope that we'll leave behind a company and an example through my kids, but now grandkids, then great grandkids, and that you will build a legacy that Steph and I have by example of love and care for other people, for our neighbor. I hope that we can restore the ability of caritas between Americans, between humans, and get the government out of the charity business and let us take care of it. At the end, I hope I'll have joy. I just hung up with a friend of mine that I met in Legatus 30 years ago. He's been a very close friend, and he's dying. And he was laughing. He goes, Tim, I'm ready. But but he's in perfect health. He's not but he looks like he is. And they gave him 2 years and no treatment. And I hung up the phone and thought, wow, this is how I want to be. Not scared, not worrying about what's going to happen, but knowing after you spent your entire life, if there is an eternal salvation, then no one's going to have eternal salvation because this man has dedicated. He was telling me, I've done enough for my kids. I'm going to give the rest to charity. We got to sit down and figure out where that's going. And so I think that's what I hope that I have, because when you're young, you don't really think about death. It happens once in a while. Somebody gets killed in a car accident or whatever. But you say, that's never going to happen to me. And as a result, but when you get to the end, or when somebody gives you a death sentence like that, now you're really kind of facing it. And I hope that I will be as joyful as he was today when my time comes, whether it's next week, next year, or 3 decades from now.
It's beautiful, Tim. So yeah, thank you very much for making the time and speaking with us and sharing us your experience. I know you're a busy man and you're always dashing off somewhere else too. So thanks for squeezing us in here. And we hope our listeners also enjoyed this. But if you want to learn more about the Napa Institute, you can check them out. Their website's napa-institute.org. They have a lot of great things. Summer conference coming up in July, a conference and procession in New York this fall, and lots of other activities in between. So be sure to check them out. But Father Lomnitzer, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, Tim, it was great talking to you. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom with us. And we'll see you next week. Until then, work hard and pray harder.